with you to create a bespoke website and app for your organisation. Call us now on 07538081212 or visit appsitetech.
Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. I'm your host at Ramadan FM 2018. I'm your host Shugufta Nasreen. Ramadan Kareem. We are here once again. Like previous 2 years, we are here to serve our community, to bring all new ideas and issues from our communities. And as the previous 2 years, we once again have a wonderful lineup of our guests. And they all are very specialist experts in their areas. I have my co-host. This year, I also have a pleasure of having a co-host. And he is.
Can I introduce myself?
Yes, you can. I was going to do the honour.
My name is Councillor Shabab Mohammed, and you are listening to Ramadan FM 2018. And we have some very special guests here today. And Shagufta, would you just introduce our guests, if you don't mind?
Or shall I do it?
Shaban, actually, sadly, your own introduction didn't go very well.
Didn't it?
Because you are not live. We had to put you up. Because I had to do it. And when you say councillors, it's very difficult to understand. So I'm going to say it, Councillors Shaban Mahmood.
Shaban Mohammed.
Shaban Mohammed. Okay,
just call me Councillor Shabs. That sounds better.
In future, yes. I'm not going to call your full name every time.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful to have Shaban with me, and I call him Shabs. He's a great brother, and I call him Shabs. So, it's wonderful to have him with me to have, co-host our program. Today we have our guests, and I'm going to introduce two of my guests, and Shabs will introduce our third guest. My first guest is a wonderful officer that most of our listeners know her already, and but having her once again with us is a pleasure and honor. Detective Superintendent Shabnam Chaudhary, leading local crime, neighbourhood and partnership across East London, Redbridge, Barking and Dagenham and Havering. We welcome Shabnam into our program, and we also have Councillor Rohit Das Gupta, and he is also a very aspiring young politician, writer and a community activist, and he has done some wonderful things that we definitely would like to hear from him. Shabs, would you like to introduce our third guest?
The third guest is Mr. Dean Armand. He's a Labour Party activist, and he was one of our co-hosts last week when obviously everything didn't go to plan. Introduce yourself, Dean.
Hello, my name's Dean Armand. I'm not a young man, and I've lived in West Ham on and off for over 50 years. Went to local school there and loved it so much I've come back to live here again.
Fantastic. So
Thank you.
I'm going to ask both of our guests, three of actually, Dean has introduced. If Shabnam, would you like to please introduce? I've done very brief, but please, if you could introduce yourself, your role, how long you've been in the service, and then we will hit on with the other questions.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum to you and all our listeners, and Ramadan Mubarak. I am Shabnam Chaudhary. I am a detective superintendent working with the Metropolitan Police. I've got 29 years policing experience, so quite a long bit of service there. And I've policed across all of East London boroughs, generally and mostly in the crime arena.
And Rohit, would you like to introduce yourself
sure.
before we start with the questions?
Hi, my name is Dr. Rohit Das Gupta. I'm an academic at Loughborough University, and most recently I have been elected as councillor for Canning Town South Ward. I've lived in East London for 8 to 9 years now, and I'm really looking forward to this new role.
Wonderful. And how did I miss the doctor? You didn't send me as a doctor because I call you councillor.
That's all right.
I
you can just call me Rohit.
Both of you and Shabs. It's just so wonderful to call both of you councillors. I've got two brothers on each side.
It feels quite unreal. I think I was in Dockside today to collect some IT, and someone's like, "Oh, the councillor," and I was like, "No, just call me Rohit."
Did you ask them who you calling?
I think it's still getting used to. I don't know about Shabs.
Yes. I think it's I've literally been struggling. I've had a lot of ward issues, and especially the crime and antisocial behaviour that's I've been dealing with quite on a regular basis, and it's quite overwhelming. All of a sudden, people coming to you, and you've got so many problems, and things have just been building and building and building over this time, and it's been real. Sometimes it is rewarding, and sometimes it is real. Trying to help people out
It's
and
hectic.
trying to do
It's a difficult job.
It's
It
a
is
real
that.
difficult job.
And since you mentioned crime and antisocial behavior, and who best to talk to, better than talking to our detective superintendent Shabnam Chaudhary, and you both counsellors, and Shabnam has done a great service to our community, and that sometimes brings me back, and I'm going to ask her at the end a question. But coming back to the crime and antisocial behavior, and as you would know, it's a great concern all UK-wide, but especially in London, and recent stabbings that took place in Newham or in East London. People are very concerned, and as you heard Councillor also saying that this is a big issue for our communities. What are your views, and what is the actual problem in your view, and how we can resolve it?
There's a lot of questions in there, Shagufta.
There are, yes. See, I'm full
So
of these
I
questions.
work over at East London now across, as I said, Barking and Dagenham, Redbridge and Havering, and I did police Newham for nearly 2 years on 2 separate occasions. And yes, we don't have dissimilar problems in terms of the antisocial behaviour. I work with many counsellors across our borough and our BCU, as we call it now, about the antisocial issues that we have. It can be generally, there are, a lot of local authorities, a lot of agencies are making cutbacks in terms of, they don't have as many sort of places for young people to go to and to engage with our communities. That said, we have to look at different ways of policing our communities, and I think that it's really, really important. And I think one of the key messages I would have to give here and across London is that we really, really need to work around with our partners, and not just partners, local authorities, statutory partners, non-statutory, the charities. There's lots and lots of agencies out there that are really keen to work with us. So that's what it's about to me. We can't police London by ourselves, and yet we do have an issue at the moment with an increase in violence and knife crime, and it's just, it's absolutely heartbreaking, really, to go home of an evening to see that young people, who are losing their lives, and it's not just the impact on them and the other younger people, it's the families of the perpetrators. It really does break up people's lives and communities.
But it is very clear that all the cuts that happen to Met Police are affecting the safety and security of our communities, and communities are rightly, there is, yes, communities do have to come together, and I think there is some work going on as well. But communities always, the public always think that safety and security and crime issues always they look towards the police. And what we have seen in recent years, that despite all the outcries of the communities and the families, the crime seems to be getting worse. At one stage we had the highest peak in the acid attacks, and again, for some reason, which obviously are not known to the public, but authorities would know, East London was again we had highest number of the acid attacks in Newham and East London. Again, when it comes to knife crime, I think we came second. I believe the borough that had the highest number was around Islington, perhaps. But we had quite a lot in Newham. We had actually last week there was a young man stabbed to death.
Yeah, in Forest Gate, I think.
Forest Gate, yes. He was quite 24 years old. So this is really making our communities very, very scared and very concerned for the young ones. It's affecting especially youth, but it's affecting communities. I think the question communities would want to know that when they want to have this reassurance from the Met Police, where do they stand? What kind of and how much security and safety they should expect from the police?
Okay, Shagufta, there's a couple of things I just want to go back on. I think you mentioned about acid attacks being the highest in Newham. I'm not sure that that's information is correct. What I would say about acid attacks is generally they are connected to robberies and gang-related matters, is what sort of my personal experience is around that. We did have an unfortunate, very tragic incident last year at Newham where the young girl was sprayed with acid from a hate crime attack. And what happens is that generally the community tend to think that because that one incident has happened, then what they do is they assume that all the other incidents that are going across London are all connected to hate crime, but they're not. So those kind of incidents, there's a difference between, you know, the robberies and also the hate crime. So let's just be clear on that. You also mentioned about communities looking to police for reassurance, and of course they've got every right to do that because that's what we're here for, to keep people safe, to reassure our public. But what is important for us is the community are the eyes and ears for the police, and if we don't get intelligence, information or work with yourselves, then we're not going to be able to solve crime by ourselves. It's not just about going out and arresting perpetrators, it's about problem solving and working with partners to make sure that we collaboratively reduce and prevent those kinds of crime.
Yeah, thank you, Shabnam, on that. But with the acid attacks, it has been reported in our local newspaper. We did have, Newham did have the highest number of acid attacks, and that includes that gang sort of related. I think there was quite recently one in Stratford, and we had a couple of others on the doorstep. So I think putting together all maybe not related but separate ones, that's how we kind of come to know. Yes, Shabs and Rohit, both of you are councillors. You know, Shabnam said that we need to work with the communities, and you have, as an elected representative, this job to work with the Met Police and to support your local
communities. I mean, the main issues at the moment I've been facing is we have Newham enforcement. Now, a lot of residents get enforcement mixed up with police. Now, if it's a noise issue, 99% of the time, residents are ringing up the police. Now, what this is actually doing is taking police officers that could be targeted elsewhere in the borough, and this is I've found this we as a borough and as councillors, we've got no joint up thinking. We should be working together, as you know. You say a community, but at the end of the day, it's a community's involvement, but it's also enforcement and the police job to work together.
Separate,
and you know, like I've been.
How would you, as a councillor, make sure that people understand? Because I think this is every time there is an incident or some kind of issue, whether it's antisocial behaviour or crime, people obviously, for their safety, they think they are safer to call 999 or call the police emergency services.
Can I just add something to what Shabs and Shabnam has also said? I think one of the big issues also in this borough, and which we are not talking about, is that there has been an absolute decimation of youth services. And I think, you know, we are talking about crime, you're talking about the role that young people play in that. And I think, you know, one of the things that we absolutely must be doing more is to increase our youth provisions. And I think there is a lot of study, you know, that does say that, you know, when you have a higher rate of youth provisions, you know, youth workers, then actually, you know, on the whole, crime does reduce. And I think that's something, as a borough, on a very political level, I think as councillors, we need to be kind of pushing towards that, definitely.
I think you raised a very valid point, Rohit, because as Shabnam said, that it's not police alone that could contain this violence against young people, knife crime or gun crime. And youth services, definitely in our borough, we have an issue with cutting down on the youth services, and people are paying price for it. But obviously, both of you now being new councillors in the council and have some powers to put things right. So I want to ask Shabs, how do you think that we can fix this problem that we have? We don't have provision for our young people, and they absolutely don't know what to do in their spare time.
Basically, at the end of the day, I think we need more apprenticeships. And at the end of the day, I think the main issue is that, you know, when you have school leavers, you have the non-academic school leaver, and these are the people that we need to target and make sure that we can put them in apprenticeship schemes in the borough. And this is what I'm going to really be pushing for, making sure that we have school leavers that don't want to go to university, but we can equip them with the skills so they can actually be plasterers.
Meaningful activities. Would you be doing that borough-wide, or is that just your
No, it's we're going to try and do stuff borough-wide, and we're going to be looking into it. But the biggest problem is that these kids that are leaving school that are non-academic are getting into gangs. Now, a lot of what I've noticed, I've only been in job for best part of 1.5 weeks, but what I've actually noticed is that there's a lot of gang grooming going on, where drug dealers are actually grooming young kids from a school age and encouraging them to deal and stuff. And this is one of the big issues that I found in the borough so far.
No, you're absolutely right, because we have seen our streets getting busy and kind of antisocial behavior, which isn't a serious crime, but it's annoyance to the local community. And I think, Dean, you wanted to say something? Or
yeah, I'd like to draw some attention to the work done by the Labour MP Sarah Jones from Croydon Central. She was chair of the all-party parliamentary group on knife crime. And if I quote here, she said, "The problem lies, or one of the issues involved is academy schools." And I quote exactly what she said. "Every single agency I spoke to said academies are a problem because increasingly there are these managed moves where kids are not expelled because they haven't done enough to be expelled, but they are managed out of the system." So bearing in mind that she chaired this group, I think her words are worth considering, that academy schools are part of the problem and one of the contributing factors to knife crime in London.
So isn't that surprising, Dean, that although one very respectable member of parliament has highlighted and must have done some research into it, and our government is still pushing for academies, and we had a quite big issue in Newham as well, and our schools are halfway academized, and some are still, I think, slowly working towards it. And that seems it does have some credential into this research, but for us here, something is beyond our control, like academization of our schools. We were really helpless when that happened. So the issue here is that how should we go forward and try to sort out things between the political people and with our Met Police. So Shabnam, if you would please.
So actually I wanted to come back to the comment that the points that Shabs was making regards to gangs and grooming. I think we've talked about working in partnership, we've talked about working with the statutory partners. I think let's be clear here that we also have to talk about the responsibility of parents. And also not just the responsibility of parents, but when you've got young kids who are going home to their families, who have suddenly had, walked in with a pair of new £120 trainers, or with a nice expensive, Michael Kors handbag or something like that. The question you'd be asking is, I can't afford to buy my child that, so how did my child actually get that? And generally speaking, what happens is if you get people that are involved in drugs, in organised crime, in any kind of criminal activity, who are grooming young children, and when they're 13, 14, 15, they're still young people. They're easily influenced. And I think that is where we need to start also, working with families. What is it that you identify as a parent that your child is doing differently in terms of coming home and engaging with different gangs? Personalities change. Times of coming home, lack of education. They're suddenly not interested in education. So there's a whole piece out there, not just about police and partners. It's about everybody.
Taking responsibility.
You, me,
community,
we all own this. We all have a responsibility to own it.
Yeah, I think, Shabnam, you have raised such a wonderful point, and I think that this point has been discussed before. And it is very true that when half of the antisocial behavior, that then leads to people and kids getting into serious crime. And it is parents also need to have their see what their kids are up to, what they're doing, and how their behavior has changed. But my question here is that if we need to engage parents, And I don't see any active campaign going on, even after all these very tragic incidents. I don't see, parents are stakeholder in all this and in our communities. And I don't see any active campaign either from the political side or from the Met or from the other community circles coming into it that can involve, engage, or maybe if it had to be, educate parents, because most of parents, and we have very different communities in our communities. So some parents can speak to their children, but there is a generation gap and there is a communication gap as well. And I think that sometimes plays quite a huge part into it. And it would be really beneficial to our listeners if we know how parents could get involved and where they can, if they have concerns about their children, if they see, if they notice a change in behavior, or obviously bringing in new stuff and kids are not answering to them, not speaking to their parents, not answering their questions, how should they, who should they contact, and where should they get help if they want to raise any concerns about the children's behavior?
So it's not easy for a parent to go to the police to say that my child is involved with crime, okay, because parents are scared that the kids are going to go, get arrested, and they have all kinds of fears and concerns. However, what the important message here is, by being involved, by speaking up, you could be saving your child's life, or you could be saving the life of another child. You only need to see what's gone on across London with the amount of young children that have died tragically through just mindless carrying of, weapons, that has had a massive impact. I know that, just to give you an example, I spoke to a parent recently whose child was at a school in Waltham Forest. There was a murder there very recently. And I don't think people really understood, or they underestimated the impact that it had on the other children. The kids that were going through GCSEs, who have gone to school and are so traumatised and so scared that that they're because of what's been happening. So I think that we do a lot of work with our police, with our partners. We do a lot of work with youth services. We do lots of engagement activities. I've been to Newham, as you're well aware of. We did the hate crime campaign recently. We've done lots and lots of different work with many communities. And I don't think parents, in the main, want not to get involved. I think some people are just not aware of who they can go to. Yes, you can come. This
was my point.
Yeah.
If
so yes, you can
advice groups get set up either by the Met, but not directly as in policing, but as a separate groups.
All agencies have a part to play. So whether it's youth services, whether it's police, whether it's education, whether it's the schools, we have Safer Schools officers in every school across London. So Safer Schools officers they might have 4 schools between one officer, but they work closely with the schools. We have schools program, we have summer programs, so we do a hell of a lot of work in terms of what we want to do to try and keep people safe
as well. Shabs,
I'd just like to say I've seen it with my own eyes. At the moment, we've had some incidents in the Canning Town and Northwood with drug dealing. And every time I've reported it, we've had some police operations recently, and the age group of the youngsters that were arrested is quite shocking. I mean, anything from 14 to 16, and
so basically minors.
And and the guys that they're actually hanging around with, I mean, they're in their 20s, 30s. So this is a growing trend, and at the end of the day, we have to work with the police and actually eradicate this. And I think the other issue is the way people report crime. Now, I've had issues of people currently, residents ringing me up about antisocial behaviour, and it's always one resident. And I keep saying to them that at the end of the day, you need to escalate this, and you need to come as a community and get 3 or 4 or a group of residents to complain and fight this, because at the end of the day, these sort of issues,
it's kind of social responsibility.
Yeah, it's social responsibility. And the other thing about gang grooming, what we do have is obviously the social deprivation levels of many people today, and some parents, just to keep a roof over their head, are actually doing 2 to 3 jobs. So the other issue is that parents are rarely at home or you have older children looking after after their siblings, and this is where we have a breakdown.
Or even I've seen when the parents are I mean, dads in our community take very less play very less role into looking after children. For some reason they think it's not their job. And mums, when even they are at home, I have noticed that some of the moms, they do not question their children why they were out. I mean, put it this way, I'm a mother, and if I had a son 16, 15, and my daughter, if they go out, I would really want to know where they were and why they are late and what they were doing on the streets, and why were they on the streets. So yes, there's a quiet, but I haven't sort of seen a way forward, like where we can say to the parents, look, you really need to get connected to these groups, and they will help you to understand if your child's behavior change, what does it mean exactly. With this, on this note, I'm going to get Councillor Rohit into our discussion, and then I think we need to go to break after.
Sure.
Rohit and final comment from
First of all, I would say that I think the point that Shabs just made about social deprivation, I think is absolutely key over here, because our parents are doing 2 jobs, 3 jobs all the time, just to put food on the table. And I think that means that they're not being able to be as involved with their children's lives as we would like them to be. And I think there's an issue over there. The other thing that you raised, Shagufta, was, how do we actually get our parents to know more about it? I think education. Really, I mean, when I say education, more like just letting parents know that there are all of these channels.
What is the mechanism to let them know?
I think again, what Shabnam said, that it's not very easy for a parent to just call up a police and say, "Oh,
exactly.
I'm a bit worried about
my
this," right?
point.
So it would be. I would think that it would be making sure institutions like schools get more involved. They tell the parents, this is something that's happening with your child. Is there something that you could talk about? I think it has to be more of a joint effort. It can't be, it just can't be, that we are calling the police for everything. But it can't just be, we can't expect that the parents will know everything.
Which I think Shabs have put it very nicely, that people are confused between the enforcement and the crime,
police,
crime, policing.
I think also, given the amount of time a child actually spends in the schools is very important. Probably in some cases, more active time there than actually at home. So that's
sorry, Rod, I will just stop you because this is a very, very good point, and I really want to get to the bottom of it. Because yes, you're saying, and I work a lot with schools. I'm a parent going at one local school, but Alhamdulillah, I have worked with different schools and try to help parents whichever way I could have. But the whole issue is the schools. If with the cuts, our police is under pressure, our schools are under pressure. They have barely enough time and resources to teach 30 or even 32 children in a classroom. They really don't get enough time to then do this extra policing and to put together classes or clubs, because they will need resources. So how would you, as a politicians, and you guys are now have a huge responsibility on your shoulder, how would you, going forward, make sure that our schools, and they are wonderful medium between parents and our community and our authorities. So how would you both, actually, it's a question to all our new councillors, how would you all make sure that schools are used in a very beneficial way, but without putting extra burden on them, because this is actually this is not going to happen, I can tell you now. But the council has to create some sort of a service or system or community group, maybe fund a community group who wants to do it. This is what I'm talking about.
I think you raise a very important point over here, because it's a very political point as well. Again, local schools have been, funding for local schools and policing has been decimated by this government. And, each council has certain statutory responsibilities towards social care, children, and so they have to put more money towards that, which is, again, another reason why this particular council hasn't been able to put as much money as they would probably like to for things like youth services. So I think that it needs to be a complete rethink of how we are funding certain services, how we can get more money for certain services, because in the next 4 years we're going to be losing even more funding from from the central government. So there are lots more challenges ahead for us. So it just, again, one thing, and I'm sure Shaban is going to agree with me, is that there is, on one level, as a local authority, we will be doing, but at the other level, if we don't get that kind of help from the central government, it makes it much more difficult for us to be able to implement all of those wonderful things that you're telling us that we should be doing.
Wonderful, Rohit.
I think it's
we're going to discuss how we get over this difficulty and do something actually. But I want to get Dean Shabs, if you don't mind, because we haven't had, and I know he has a point. So
yes, at the request of Councillor Shaban Mohammed, I've researched knife crime quite extensively, and over the last few months, this is before his election, to come up with some practical solutions. And what he was looking for was not gesture politics or political rhetoric. There's no good banging on about Tory cuts. That isn't the solution. But there is a solution available to us if we want to use it. And it very much echoes what D.S. Chowdhury said about multi-agencies getting involved with the police. And the example I will give you is Scotland. Back in 2005, Strathclyde Police, now Police Scotland, set up the Violence Reduction Unit, the VRU. In 2005, a UN report came out on crime on a global basis, and it said Scotland was the most violent country in the developed world. They implemented a strategy, which I'm sure D.S. Chowdhury knows all about, involving the police with health, education, social working groups and others, such as charities and schools, and they've dramatically brought that down. And there are very practical steps. If we were to follow the strategy of using the police, as D.S. Chowdhury suggested, with these other groups in a multidisciplinary approach, it can be done. And there's research going back over a decade on how it's done. So the answer is there. It's no good banging on about Tory cuts. We need practical steps to break this situation.
We need to now get over and above it and actually find a solution within that. Shabnam, if I take Shabs, because you want to say something, and then finally, before we go on break, I want to have...
No, I was just going to say, no, I agree. I think that we could all sit here and say, oh, we've got to make cutbacks and we're going to lose officers and we're going to lose, local authorities and, making big cutbacks everywhere. The bottom line is this. We have to make the best of what we have.
Yes.
And the way to make the best of what we have is to start working smarter. We as an organisation, we've moved on massively. We've made some fundamental changes. We work smarter. We have body-worn video cameras. We have iPads. We have tablets for officers, so that instead of having to sit in a police station once they've reported or investigated the initial allegation of a crime, they then don't have to go back into the police station, sit there for an hour writing it up. They can actually do it there. They can pop into a coffee shop, they can sit there and write it up. At the same time, they're visible, they're reassuring the public, and they're getting the job done. So, I mean, that's just one small example of it. We have a whole sort of multitude of changes that are coming about. We've gone from 32 boroughs to 3, to BCUs, to 12 BCUs in the next few months over the next year. So you'll see some big changes. I work over at the 3 boroughs that are now become 1 borough. And there are some challenges for us. However, once we start working and collaborating with our partners, as we have and as we will continue to do so, then we can hopefully see some significant changes. As I said, the most important thing here is about keeping young people safe. And I think that's really got to be the priority for everybody who owns it and who should actually be, it's a call to action, really.
That's right,
I was just about to say, when I was growing up, I mean, my school was one of the first community schools. And what they tended to do is, when school leavers, they would ask us to come to evening classes, and they would tell us, "Oh, what would you like to do?" And I had a fondness for computing at the time, so we went there and we learnt to program or microelectronics and stuff like that. But it's really, the main issue is we have to capture these youngsters and somehow put them on the right path and the right direction. And the schools can play a big part, but also it's on the individual as well. We need to literally work on our youngsters in the community.
Well said,
and as a councillor, I will be doing that.
Yes, I expect all of you to do a wonderful job. Otherwise, we are, here, and we will call you again next year in Ramadan Radio and ask you what you have done. And so it's a good way. We're just going to go on to a little break. And just to our listeners, it was such a wonderful and useful discussion that we had, and we heard the very expert opinions from our police chief, from our councillors, from our very experienced activist Dean as well. And it is, I think, every parent's nightmare to even think that their child could be involved in such a knife or gun crime one day. And it's a very appalling thought. I can tell you, I'm a mother as well. So we just want to go on to a short break. Please stay with us. And when we come back, we're going to discuss more on this topic. But also, I want to discuss some other stuff that our guests have done in their lives. And it would be a very interesting talk. So please do stay with us. You are listening to Ramadan FM 2018. I'm your host, Shugufta Nasreen, and my co-host is Shabs, which is Councillor Shaban Muhammad. Yeah. I said it right this time. He was looking at me. Thank you.
Thank you.
0208 558 2000 for a free, no obligation valuation, and watch us do what we do best.
Grab your taste of luxury at Pink's Boutique. Designer brands like Hugo Boss and Armani to keep your style in check. Catering for ladies, men and kids, Pink's Boutique has it all under one roof. And we offer shipping worldwide. So get the look to fit your attitude. Visit us on our website at pinksboutique.co.uk. Remember, that's pnksboutique.co.uk. Or pop into our store at 302 Brentwood Road, Romford, RM2 5TA.
Ramadan FM 2018.
The voice of British Muslims.
European University of Business now offering BA Business Management, MBA with specialisation. Our courses are regulated by UK Quality Assurance Agency and taught in a highly professional environment. Special offer for Ramadan FM 2018 listeners only. Please call on 0203 288 3143. Email info@universityofbusiness.eu.
Solicitors in. You can expect a variety of services from us, ranging from family law, immigration, human rights, money claims, personal injury and many more. We are committed to providing you with the best legal advice suited to your individual circumstances. Drop us a call on 0203 500 8000. Our office is located at 62 Barking Road, East Ham, E6 3BP.
Why spend summer in your room when you can fly off to your dream destination with facilities like car hire and hotel bookings? Well, Flight Masters have got you covered. We offer holiday packages, city breaks and flights at the most reasonable prices with the best provision of services. So why delay? Call us today on 0203 598 9938 or visit our website at www.flightmasters.com.
Do you dream of travelling to those blessed lands where the beloved of Allah was born? Does your heart yearn for Medina, the city of the beloved? If it is your time to experience a spiritual journey words cannot justify, then join us at Sam Travel and Tours and book your Hajj and Umrah packages today. We offer group and tailor-made packages for all your requirements. Based on Romford Road in London, for our last 10 days Umrah package, please call us on 0208 478 8911.
Ramadan FM 2018.
The voice of British Muslims.
MR Accountants provide a full range of accountancy and taxation services, including annual and management accounts, self-assessment, tax returns, VAT.
Assalamu alaikum. We are back from our little break. I hope our listeners are still with us and enjoying the debate. It is very useful debate. And I think we have really touched upon some very serious and concerning issues here. Our community, because I work in the community and I know how much parents and our communities are affected by knife crimes, gun crime and antisocial behavior. And we are going to work with our new councillors, new officers and police officers in this area to make the area better in Newham. And obviously, wherever we can make a difference, we will make a difference. Taking our debate into another level, I just wanted to touch on certain points with our guests, because one of our guests, Councillor Rohit Dasgupta, has written a very interesting book. He's done quite a lot of work. He's a lecturer at a university, But his book that I was quite intrigued by the title, and I just wanted to ask him some question on what he means by when he put that title on. He's written a book on friendship as social justice. So I just wanted to ask you, what is the book about? And with this title, what you wanted to achieve from this book?
Actually, the title is Friendship as Social Justice Activism. Shagufta, the book actually took 4 years to do. It's an edited volume that I did with University of Chicago Press, with 3 other contributors from the United States. Basically, the idea of this book was saying that, how can friendship itself become a form through which social justice activism movements can be held, can be supported over time. So, we've got contributors who've spoken about being a part of domestic violence. We've got contributors who talk about, working in the garment industry in Bangladesh. And in all of these cases, we're talking about how friendship and kinship, the kind of the idea of belonging, how that has sustained the movement. And if we think about it, even in the case of Newham, and all of us being part of the political movement over here, the reason why I got involved was because of certain friendships that I formed, with the person sitting across the table over there. That is what sustained the movement, right? We can't just be as solitary activists walking down the road. We need kinship, we need belonging, and we need sustenance. And so the book kind of celebrates that friendship is a form of that sustenance that helps us move towards all of these global movements around the world.
Activism,
social justice activism.
So it is a quite interesting idea to have activists from every community who doesn't have any per se, like designations or maybe say on the bigger platforms, but you can still be linked from every part of the world. Am I right in thinking that?
Absolutely. So a large part of the work I do, Shagufta, is looking at the role that digital media and social media plays in kind of social justice movements. If you think about the kind of the umbrella movement in Hong Kong, that was very much sustained through social media and how that linked people together to kind of work towards that. If we think about, if you think about the Arab Spring, if we think about the kind of the wall end protests, all of these were movements as well.
Some movements in India as well, if you remember that.
Absolutely, and if you even think about something like Me Too that is happening right now, right? Yes. It is a way in which we all are talking about a shared experience we might have faced in a certain aspect of our life, and that way, and in a way that experience bonds us, connects us, because we've all faced that form of oppression through one way or the other, and how we can come together, how we can actually that sense of belonging amongst us can bring us together as friends, as kins, and it allows us to rethink and reshape what social justice activism means today.
Share the experiences across the world. So you could be sitting here, but you could be speaking to someone in Cuba and trying to link up the activism and perhaps.
Absolutely. I think I think definitely yes.
And how is it going to benefit? You see. What as we were speaking before the program, that we in our back homes, we know that there are lots of issues, and there is a huge amount of people. They are doing activism. They are making difference. They are fabric of our communities, but they are not really sort of known for it. But through similar kind of movements, how you think that we can link up and even benefit those causes, back home where people are suffering. But and the governments are not. They're doing what they have to do, right? So governments always have a pattern to help and support other countries, other issues, and there's a way of funding it. But there are lots of work that get done by activists, and we know that because we pretty much all of us are here in one way or another, activists or doing something different. So how you think that through your book, how did you come up with the idea how activists here can benefit a cause somewhere else in the world?
Not really. That wasn't what we were doing. We were more about talking about grassroots level activism. I think there is always this tendency of trying to think about, the West as the benefactor that helps people in all of these developing countries. But I think we need to kind of move beyond that. And I think we had this conversation before we started about how the diaspora can both be a blessing and a curse. On some ways, we've seen how certain channeling of money has helped, certain right-wing groups in places like India to really emerge. But at the same time also the diaspora acts as a way of safeguarding against any kind of that form of kind of right-wing politics. So I think it's kind of both, but my book was kind of not talking about the role of us, but kind of thinking about what the grassroots does and how we can sustain those.
I would love to have a copy of it.
I will give you a copy.
Yeah, with your signatures on.
Yes.
We moving on to, because we have very short time left, moving on to DCI Shabnam Chaudhary, because you have done such a wonderful work. We only talked about one aspect because these were the questions community have. So doing justice to our program, I had to put them to you. But you're doing great work, with your job or even off your job. Sometimes you go further mile to do things for our communities, and having you in our community is wonderful blessing, I would say. And having a women officer on your level from our communities, another honor for our community. You done last year, you done a program Girls Aloud, and that was again pretty much the similar issues around the girls' safety. And I know you have planned another program this year on a similar pattern, and to deal with, I think, knife crimes as well. So you are doing so much in your own above your role. So I would really like to know what you're going to do this year to bring that program on.
Sure. Look, well, let's just say, first thing is I joined the Metropolitan Police to serve the public, whether it was in a professional capacity or whether it was in my own time, and I have the opportunity and the pleasure to do it in both ways. So for me, that's a real, it's a real passion of mine. The Girls Aloud is my branding. It's not something that I get to do during my day job, because I have a day job which is extremely challenging and very, very busy, but it also allows me to work with all our partners. So what we've done this year is we've got a big event at the Emmanuel Centre in Marsham Street in Westminster. It's on the 28th of June. We are hosting up to about 500 attendees. We are working with our communities to tackle knife crime and to tackle hate crime in partnership. This is going to be my call to action to everybody that attends that event. What we've done is we've got some keynote speakers. We've got the Deputy Mayor of Policing and Crime, Sophie Linden, coming along. We've got Assistant Commissioner Helen Ball. We have a very young, really nice ex-gang member from Newham. His name is Rahil Butt. I've heard him speak before at a Newham event, and I snapped him up to come and speak at my event. Really, really passionate. What I want to do is when everybody comes to that event, we'll have a brochure, obviously, but we'll have a pledge page. And on that pledge page, it's my expectation that everybody will sign up to doing something. It could be something really minor. It could be something like going off and speaking to one of their neighbours. It could be to host an event. Multi-faith sectors are normally overlooked, and I've done a lot of work, having worked at Scotland Yard last year for the last 15 months with the faith sectors and with partners. And, with the mosques, Ramadan, with the synagogues, with the Gurdwaras, all of those community establishments, all of those faith sectors play a big, big part in keeping young people safe, because they can go and talk to people. You can do it on Friday prayers. You can do it on, on the Sabbath. You can do it at any time, any gathering. You can go and speak to people. You can speak to your young people. You can educate them. You can educate parents. So the event is about that. But most importantly for me, what that event is about is bringing young women together within the faith sectors. Because, Shagufta, for many, many years, I've been challenging the mosques, the Gurdwaras, all of those places where men seem to have the front seat, and they don't allow women to have a space. And it's important. Women play a massive part in reducing crime, in contributing to crime, in stopping young children from being involved. They know, as primary carers, when their young children are being radicalised or when they are involved in grooming, they have a sense that perhaps fathers don't necessarily have, or brothers or uncles. And that's the key message for me, is to bring those women together so that they can go back out, and over the next 6 months after, I will be challenging all those people that make a pledge to say, you made that pledge, now what have you done?
Fantastic.
And involved in all of that is the police, because it's the police, although it's my event, and I have a great project team of officers from across London who have been fantastic, really innovative, really creative in what we've got. It's going to be a really good event. But it's not about the day, it's about the work that we
What
continue to
happens
do
after
with the
as well,
communities after that.
I think
and
that
I know that you haven't signed up, Shagufta, so this is a bit of a telling off for you, so you need to be signing up.
Yes, I hold my hands up, and yes,
Fantastic.
guilty at this moment, but definitely I'm not going to miss it. I came last year, I will be there, and if you need any pushy mum there to speak, then I'm available. And
what I was going to say, I think we need to encourage more young sisters to come to these events and actually break these barriers down, because I think a lot of parents are really apprehensive about sending young sisters to these events, but it's an eye-opener. As a father of young 2 daughters, I'll probably send them myself.
I think it's amazing what Shabnam's doing there.
Just one last question. Shabnam, can anyone sign up to the event, or is it like invitation only?
It will be invitation only. I will send invitations here, but it's 18 and over, because we want to go. I've written to every local authority chief executive to ensure that community safety partners are there. So it's not just about local communities. I've written to the heads of schools to ask, and colleges to ask for their students who are 18 and over, so that they can go back and pass key messages on. We have got a wide range of people. We've gone to many faith sectors. We've gone to all the mosques, all across London, to get people to come along. Because
last year we had a very good
turnout,
engagement, and I actually took girls from Sarah Bennell School as well. I don't know this year how they're going to how they're linking up, but last year, and it would be very beneficial if both of our councillors can take note, and if they want to help and support, participate.
Yeah, it's a fantastic idea.
Fantastic idea, yes.
Dean, I know we sort of went away and we went into a bit of more serious discussion, but nonetheless, academisation in our borough at the moment is a very hot topic. And again, these are the issues that most concerns our community, because their education, their safety, well-being, all these issues are very, very sort of interrelated as well. You mentioned that some of the antisocial behaviour, or maybe some part in playing into youth crime, is due to academies. And I know you wanted to make another point. What aspect of the academy you think played part in it, and how it could be fixed? So yes, please, if you could let us know.
Yes, I believe that based on the research done by Sarah Jones and the All Parliamentary Group on Knife Crime, which is quite extensive, that it's very clear, because she didn't mince her words. She said every agency I've spoken to said the academy schools are part of the problem. But to be specific, it's not academy schools per se, it's the exclusion policy, where young people, especially, as you'll be aware, it's mainly boys, are excluded but not expelled. So they're part of the education system, but they're not in education. Okay. And directly as a result, they are hanging around on the streets, they're meeting bad people, and this is what's leading on to it. And there is a very simple solution.
I'm just going to clarify for our listeners, the parents that exclusion from the system is not as you would expel a student. No. If you expel, then it goes into another authority or another system to be housed, to be schooled. But if you just exclude them, they are still in the system, but they are not actually learning or doing anything good for them.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay, great.
And the simple, straightforward solution is simply to apply good governance and scrutiny to academy schools, especially with regard to keeping an eye on what's happening with their exclusion policy. And it goes back to what...
And how would they do? I mean, at this moment, as I understand in the schools, we have school, we had then the governing body that, anything happens, it get discussed, and then governors have a quite strong say on how the policies are made in schools. But in academies, I heard, obviously, that there's a slightly different system. So what in this research says that how we can change the exclusion policy in academies?
It links back to the techniques that D.S. Chowdhury mentioned, which are put together is often known as intelligent policing. It's getting the facts and the numbers to understand precisely what's going on. So a simple way of doing that would just be for the local authority to monitor the academy schools as well as the non-academy schools. Let's not single out academy schools, just to find out exactly what are the numbers, how many people or how many pupils are being excluded, how long are they being excluded for, and what provision is made for them when they are excluded, rather than simply being turfed out of the school and left to their own devices.
So people, because we have some schools in Newham that have been academized already, so we see there's nothing else they can do, but the parents could be reassured that the policies could be changed and exclusion policy could be tackled by changing.
We need to manage the
academy.
exclusion policy much more effectively so that it's seen as an extreme measure and a last resort. Unfortunately, that isn't the case at the moment, which is why we're seeing rising numbers of exclusions and the average length of the exclusion increasing. But that is something that can be dealt with increased governance and better scrutiny.
I mean, thank you very much, Dean. That was the point. I would never understood any other way, and I'm very cautious about academies. You know, I'm pretty much state school kind of person, but you know, that reassured me, and I'm sure lots of listeners, parents that are listening, and their schools being turned into academies, can reassure that there are things that could be put in place to safeguard their children. Last but not least, chaps, I just wanted to, because today you are a co-host, but I'm sort of
I'm letting you be in the driving seat today, so obviously it might be the other way around on Thursday.
Experienced driver, perhaps, chaps. I've got sort of old license for the license. What I wanted to ask you, what brought you in? This is a question I wanted to ask you for a long time. What brought you into the politics?
Main reason was my area and how I wanted to change it. I've seen, obviously I grew up in the area, I've seen social deprivation, I've seen people in
you lived there?
I've lived there all my life, and I've seen my own friends, you know, go through a life of drugs, and some of them have actually died, or you know, live a life of alcoholism. If the father was an alcoholic, then you're 99% of the time guaranteed the son's going to be an alcoholic. And the only reason I've actually became an activist is about changing people's perception. And obviously, if you change people's perception, give them something to look forward to, and you know, change their thinking. Now, there are things that you can do in your life to change it. And we, as a party, as I said to you, as a Labour Party member, that's what I intend to do. Give people at least that little bit of aspiration that they can change themselves and benefit themselves as well.
I'm sure you will too, because you are a very enthusiastic person, chaps, and it's good that you lived in the area and you have connection. You've seen everything through your own life, so you're not relying on other people to tell you what the issues are. You know them, and you will, I know, you know, bang on them.
You know, at the end of the day, it's about my main issue is it's about getting on. And obviously, when I grew up in Canning Town, it was a different place. It was a very right-wing, racist place, and it's about changing people's perceptions and, you know, changing
opening
that,
up opening
up our community. And you know, as I said to you, it's about getting on, regardless of your religious background or your race or your colour.
Opening up, basically.
Benefiting.
I know the areas, especially towards Canning Town, it feels very close to the main community here in Newham. And obviously, you being on board now, I really hope that this perception will change and the more good stuff will come.
Well, at the end of the day, like there's other things I want to look at, is like environment. At the end of the day, if we can change the social environment for many of these residents, maybe they can change themselves. If you give them the facilities in the area, better parks, better you know, cleaner. And that'll change in itself.
Good quality of life. Good quality of life.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, this is wonderful. Very early days that you are councillor, but I know both of you will do wonderful.
Believe you me, I've not stopped. I can tell you, I've not stopped.
I know you will never stop. I know, and that's why I support you always, chaps. And happy to have you as a co-host. And thank you very much. Our time has come to an end, actually, about 10 minutes ago. But this is the beauty of the real community issue discussion. That is more important that we do discuss the issues, and we look at the positive and the negative sides as well. And we have discussed positive things and we have discussed the negative things and how to get over it, because we cannot just keep living with the negative and keep thinking, oh, this cannot happen and that cannot happen. I think being the activists we are here, we always try to make things do things rather than say we can't do it. So we are, I can do kind of people. I'm going to say thank you to our guest, Councillor Rohit Das Gupta, DCI Shabnam Chaudhary, lovely activist friend Dean, and my co-host and today my guest as well, Councillor Shehban Muhammad.
And keep listening, and what I like to say, what a great platform that we've got here, and what great speakers we've had, and what a great debate we've had today, and discussion on all the topics. It's been really good.
Absolutely honoured to have our guests here, and all these people, all you in the studio. You do quite a lots of stuff in the community, and especially to our sister. As a community, we really respect her and support her. She does so much work in our communities that sometimes is not actually on there everywhere, but I know that she does a lot of stuff. So keep it up, and thank you very much for coming to the show, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shagufta.
Thank you.